Welcome, Dr. Wong. Nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so today we will be talking about U.S.-China relationships in the 1990s. How much of an impact do you think the events in Tiananmen Square had on the political and economic ties between these two nations?
Well, it obviously had a big impact because the student protesters were demanding an end to the government corruption, and the Chinese government responded by inhumanely killing these students. The U.S., obviously being a proponent of democracy, responded by suspending military sales and diplomatic relations in response to this event.
Okay, do you think the tensions between the United States and China would have developed without the Tiananmen Square incident?
Well, in my opinion, I think that ever since Nixon's trip to China, the U.S. has actively tried to mend diplomatic relations with China, like how Carter acknowledged the PRC's One China policy, which in turn caused tension with Taiwan. So essentially, no, I think that their relations would not have been worsened at all.
I see. Were there any attempts to repair these damaged relations during the 90s?
Well, on the bright side, the U.S. managed to improve ties through Clinton's policy of constructive engagement. Basically, the U.S. sought to promote economic and political ties while promoting democracy, open markets, open trade, etc., etc.
Well, these efforts to improve the international community have definitely had their effect on today's society, as shown in the increased cooperation between these two nations. Thank you, Dr. Wong, for your insight.
Much obliged. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Earlier we discussed several events that affected U.S.-China relationships leading up to the 1990s. Incidents such as the Tiananmen Square massacre greatly troubled the United States. Dr. Cao, what were some of the other critical moments of the Sino-American relations during that time?
One critical moment was when President Bush sold 150 5/16 fighter planes for defensive purpose, violating a previous compromise to the Chinese government. China was not happy with the U.S. support of Taiwan as an independent nation.
I see. Were there any more tense times in Sino-American relations?
Well, the third Taiwan Straits crisis was a defining point in our relationship with China. The U.S. government allowed the Taiwanese President Lee Teng-hui to enter the U.S. to speak at Cornell, a move that represented a policy change that legitimized the Taiwanese government.
Okay, what did this mean for the U.S.-China relations?
The PRC was not happy with this action, claiming that it damaged China's peaceful reunification process and promoted the idea of two Chinas. Mainland China began conducting military exercises near Taiwan, which include shooting missiles in Taiwanese waters. To respond, the U.S. military used the greatest show of force in Southeast Asia since the Vietnam War, sending 2 aircraft carrier battle groups into the region. This crisis, however, did not end in any actual conflict.
The events in Taiwan and Hong Kong are similar, with several key differences. Dr. Cao, I'm sure you're familiar with the 1992 U.S. Hong Kong Policy Act. What effect did the signing of this act have?
The main issue was that the U.S. did the opposite of what China expected. The treatment of Hong Kong as a non-sovereign entity was in opposition of the Chinese government's opinions. However, the U.S. continued on its way due to the trading potential of Hong Kong.
So the U.S. maintained a very tense relationship with China during this time?
Yes, in fact, in 1993, the U.S. accused that the Chinese merchant ship Galaxy was carrying harmful chemicals. However, the claims did not have strong evidence behind them. The tensions further increased.
Did U.S.-China relations end up improving?
Yes, in 1993, Chinese President Jiang Zemin met with U.S. President Bill Clinton during a summit meeting in Seattle, which was the first formal meeting since February 1989 between the leaders of the two countries, marking a turning point in U.S.-China relations.
When did US-China relations start to look more like modern relations?
When Clinton started a free nose policy to Taiwan, tensions started to relax. By saying that the US does not support the independence of Taiwan, any notion of one China, one Taiwan, two Chinas was eliminated, and Taiwan's membership in any international body whose members are sovereign states would be denied. China finally felt safe in Taiwan's allegiance to China. Taiwan's economy slowly started to worsen after US started to trade more with China.
There seems to be many improvements in US-China relationships during the 90s. Did the progress continue into the 21st century?
Yes, unfortunately, these highs came with mutual losses. 2 PRC citizens died as a result of the September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center, which led to the PRC's strong support of the War on Terror. Headlined by the US, mainland China contributed $150 million of bilateral assistance to help Afghan reconstruction, and voted in favor of UNSCR 1373, a counter-terrorism measure.
Thank you for your insight, Dr. Cao. This has been 6 Steps to a 6. Have a nice day, everybody.